The topic today, protecting your children, and I'd say, and your grandchildren from themselves and for themselves. We're going to talk about many of the tools that are available to protect future generations from bad third parties, from themselves, from bad judgment, from lawsuits, from divorce. What can you do to protect your hard-earned assets for future generations? And there are a lot of tools out there. And I think as you think about what got you to join us here today, I think we can all relate to the fact that the world feels scary right now. Um, right now, the markets are way down. There are threats all over the world. There's a lot of chaos out there. So I think it's really important to focus back in on what we can control. There's so much we can't control, but estate planning and setting up the right structures for what we've worked so hard for, that's something we can control. And we truly believe the concepts we're going to talk about today can change your family's future for the better. And we want you to imagine what's possible for your children, your grandchildren, and other family members when you work to protect all that you've worked so hard to earn. Because just putting a few tools into place can make a life or death difference in the future of future generations. It can save hundreds of thousands or millions in future unnecessary taxes or divorces or lawsuits. There's so much that we can do, and you don't have to be ultra wealthy to do this. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Um, what are we here to cover today? Mike, why don't you lead us through that?
Yeah, and again, the overall focus acknowledges and really underscores the fact that there's some things you can control. There's so many things, Mark just said, so many things out of our control that are off-putting, that are scary. Well, here we're going to deal with the practical world of your family, your planning, and issues we can address. So what are we going to do today? Well, protecting your kids from themselves. We have so many stories of kids who are doing things that are maybe not ideal. Sometimes it's a problem child where there really is an issue that's concerning. It might be a kid with special needs, and how do you deal with that? And also, how do you set up a trust for the kid who's really good, who's thriving, who's capable? What are the protections that you can put in place in cooperation with your kid? You're not doing something to your kid, but really for your kid and with your kid. The perfect grandchildren. We're certainly going to talk about trust structures, steps you can take to set things up so that your grandkids are going to have a little more financial security as we look to the future. We'll have a few stories we will intersperse. We have an unending list of stories. Every day, every time we think we've heard it all, somebody else comes in with a new story that just knocks our socks off. So many issues to get into. It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. So we're gonna cover some great topics today.
Yeah, and this is for informational purposes. This is to educate and share different tools. This isn't legal advice. We can't really legally advise you unless you're our client. So this is for educational purposes. Feel free to share this with that caveat. We're here to inform you and hopefully entertain you as well and give you some ideas for your own family. For those of you who don't know us, I think it's important just to give you a little bit of background about our firm and why we talk about these issues. So we are one of America's first estate planning and elder law focused firms. And we know that because Michael Gilfix and my mom, Myra Gerson Gilfix, helped to create the field of elder law. He started America's first free legal aid program in 1973 when he graduated from the Stanford Law School. Literally America's first free legal aid program for the elderly. He really helped to train hundreds of lawyers around the country to start similar programs around the country to raise money, and is widely credited with being one of, if not the founders of the elder law field. Coined the term elder law. You had the trademark for that, I think, and donated it to one of the many organizations you created, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So this is what we do. This is what we think about. We're very proud to be part of the Bay Area community. We've been here for over 35 years. We serve clients throughout the state of California, from San Diego all the way up to Wairika. If you're in California, we can help you. And our goal is to provide extraordinary value, peace of mind, and to just help you protect all that you've earned and to protect your loved ones and to find the legal tools that are available and to do it in plain English so you actually understand what you're doing. So on that note, I also just want to spend just one moment. It's not just Mike and I in our firm. We have a number of outstanding attorneys, Nick Klingenberg, Renee Conrad, work with me on a daily basis. Francis Lepole is our tax guru. So we all work together. So if you do want to work with us, we all work together and we're here to serve you. We have a fantastic team we're very proud of.
Mhm.
So protecting children from themselves, now, do you have to worry about this? Well, you might think, well, I don't have that much. I don't need to worry about this too much. I'm just going to leave stuff directly to my kids. Well, if you own a house in the Bay Area or really most of California, you probably have a pretty sizable estate just in home equity alone. If you bought a house 5, 10, 15 years ago, it's up significantly. And think about the idea of, what if something happens to you and assets go to your kids? If they're under 18, they would get control of that really when they turn 18 if you don't put other tools in. Same with grandkids. If you're leaving assets to grandkids and something happens to you before they turn 18, if you don't have the right tools in place, they get full control at the age of 18. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could have handled a large amount of money at 18. I wasn't the most irresponsible, but I was a big baseball card collector growing up, and I might have thrown a lot of money at what are now worthless 1980s Topps and Donruss cards, among other things.
Excuse me, did you say might have?
I did
Might have?
throw some money. Hey, you did too, by the way. We both bought
We
a lot.
don't talk about that.
We don't talk about it. Yes, they're all worthless now. Most of them, not all. What if a friend gets into the picture? When people hear that a friend inherits money or comes into money, strange things start to happen. We all see it. Money changes the equation for really everyone. What if your child or grandchild is in a bad relationship? What if they get divorced in the future? What if they have a manipulative spouse or significant other? What if they're sued? A car accident, that can happen to any of us. What if they just aren't very good with money? They're not good at judging investments. There are so many reasons why we want to protect future generations. Not everybody needs this, but it usually can't hurt to put some protective tools into place. And you don't know how your kid's going to turn out in many cases, right? Like, we have many clients who are like, I mean, I think my daughter's going to be good. She seems responsible, but I don't know. You know, people change in their 20s, even their 30s. Life changes. So what can you do to protect your kid in ways that are win-win? You know, where worst case scenario, it's not that bad. And in best case scenario, you've protected millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So really, that's what we're here to talk about. And Mike, why don't you talk about a problem child, what that means?
Let's do, and by the way, before I do, if you have any comments or questions, you can enter it in the Q&A or chat function on the screen. So don't hesitate. I'm not sure we'll have time for questions at the end. We really try to get done very efficiently and cover everything, but we encourage that. We welcome you to do so. Okay. Protective trust for the problem child. What does that mean? The most important point to make in this context is that it's your money, it's your family. If you think there's a problem, there's a problem. It doesn't matter if the outside world does. It doesn't matter if your kid or your other kids agree. If it concerns you and you feel you need to do something about it, you should do something about it. You know, you shouldn't think, oh, gee, I shouldn't do this to my kid, and then lose sleep at night. We're parents. You know, we have responsibilities to ourselves and to our families and to our grandkids to be objective about these issues to the greatest extent possible. So again, the most important point, again, it's self-defining. If you think there's a problem, we should do something about it, and we can. I'm going to go through a couple of examples in just a moment, but the point is that if we know what the issue is, we can craft a trust. We can come up with language to address it, to protect your child from herself or from himself. It can be done. Okay, so in the recent past, let me just give you a few examples of situations where the kid wasn't always, a bad kid. I mean, certainly we've run into drug issues, very bad judgment, criminal behavior, and those are obviously terrible situations that you have to address, but it isn't always quite so clear. Okay, wonderful kid, a son living nearby, college education. He decided to become a day trader because anybody can do it. Traded at night. He did well. He made a fortune. He's lost everything. He got overly aggressive, saw no reason to put the brakes on, just went crazy, just used really bad judgment. He's 24 years old. He thought he understood the world of stocks and investments better than anybody else on earth. Not an uncommon phenomenon here in the Bay Area. Another kid decided about 3 years ago to great education, higher education, paid for by mom and dad, moved to Belize, is living on the beach, is in touch with mom and dad often to say, send money. Good kid, smart kid. But what about that? And what if that kid inherited a whole lot of money from you without strings attached? Who knows where the value judgments really are? We have another situation where dad, thinking he was being very smart a number of years ago, decided to put his two kids on title to his home. He did that for tax reasons, and frankly, the advice he got was wrong, but he did. He is now in his 90s, and his two kids are forcing the sale of the home because they want their money out of it. They are essentially kicking dad out of the house. Now, who knew? So dad is obviously changing his trust so that any other assets he has are not going to go to those two kids. But who would have thought? He never would have imagined that they would do this. One of the two in particular needs money. They're forcing the sale of the house, which they have the right to do, unfortunately, under California law. Another kid is wonderful, would give you the shirt off his back, and he's literally done that. He invites homeless people into the family home because he thinks they should have a place to sleep. Big heart, not good judgment. That suggests so many other things. One more. NFTs in the world of cryptocurrency, somewhat risky, one might say. And one kid had about $40,000 that he had saved up, put every penny into it because he knew it was the way to go, lost everything. So again, these aren't all bad kids, bad people, but judgment has to be called into question. So what can you do? Well, it's limitless. Some folks would say, they don't have control of any money. You can say this in your trust planning until they're 35, until they're 40. One of the most compelling, poignant stories is a lady who was all of 4'9". And when she talked with me, her son was in his 40s or 50s. She set up the trust so that her son was going to get control of his inheritance once he attained age 70. Okay, I told her that was cruel, and she loved it. She just loved it. So, but you can put age limits. You cannot allow your kid to be a trustee of his own trust. You can have some third party or have co-trustees to put the brakes on inappropriate judgments. So many things. There can be conditions. Sometimes he only inherits if he gets a higher education. Now, you can do that. There's some limits in public policy, but again, you have a lot of control and flexibility. You can build in accounting responsibilities so that activities under the trust are reported to a third party who then has some authority to change the trustee, to impose some restrictions. There can be penalties, in other words, for inappropriate judgment and inappropriate action. So not easy to craft these, and needless to say, it's not a one size fits all. We'll reiterate and hammer this point, but you can take action. The challenge and the opportunity for you is to share with us what the issue is. Don't just put your head in the sand. If it concerns you, it's a legitimate concern by definition, and we can do something about it. Just make sure that everything makes sense to you.
And we had a good question that I think is actually on point, was what can you adjust these over time? And absolutely, you typically can adjust your plan as you see your child develop and grow up and see if they're getting better or worse when it comes to managing money. So there are some steps you might take that are irrevocable. There are some tax planning steps we take where you have to do things that are challenging to undo, but most of the time, absolutely, we can adjust your plan over time. So I think that's also an important point. So I want to change directions just a little bit. And if you have a child or a loved one with a disability or with a long-term illness or a problem, I think you can probably relate to this. I certainly can in my own family. A diagnosis changes everything. What if there is a diagnosis of a serious physical condition, mental condition, something in a newborn where you find out that they're going to have special needs, they're going to need extra support for the rest of their life? What can
Mark, I don't hear you. Sound? I can hear nothing. Can I be heard? If I can be heard, I'll continue until Mark comes back on. Okay. So the point here, again, is that things happen in life. There can be a diagnosis when a child is younger. There can be an accident when a child might become disabled and not able to work going forward. So let's talk about that for just a moment. Let's go forward here. Okay. One thing that we hear all the time when you have somebody has two kids, one has a disability or one just has terrible judgment. They're tempted to leave everything to the good kid. And they say, hey, take care of your brother. I trust you. Not a good idea. That is not an approach that we ever recommend. Among other things, the good kid could turn rotten, could actually have judgment issues you don't even know about. Your child could be sued, could face a divorce, could become ill. There's a long list of reasons why giving control of that good kid, not just control, but actually ownership of all of the assets, not a good idea. So you do need to be proactive and think about the trust structure. How do you set things up so that the kid who has some issues is going to be taken care of? So this is where we get into the world of special needs trusts. Okay. If a child has a disability, is not able to work, and disability, by the way, in this context means that he or she is not able to work, not able to make a living. It isn't just that you have a diagnosis. It comes down to the practical question of whether or not you can get a job and keep a job. So if that's an issue, again, special needs trusts. The idea here is you set up a trust so that you leave money for the benefit of your child, but the trust is structured so that none of it counts or interferes with eligibility for government benefits. There's an income program, there's Medi-Cal as a healthcare benefit, there's housing options, on and on. So if you have a child with a disability, and some of you listening have this, and we have prepared special needs trusts for you, if you have that issue, this is perhaps the most important step you're going to take. Tax is important. The other kids are important, but taking care of that kid with a disability, that's paramount. It's lifetime protection. So bottom line, this is the book, by the way, that Mark and I co-authored about special needs trusts. For our clients, we send them out for no cost. We sell them modest price on our website. It's on Amazon. Very practical, by the way. This book is practical. It's readable. If you have an issue here, you should certainly give a copy. The special needs trust can hold any amount of money without disturbing eligibility for government benefits. It's irrevocable. There's many elements it must include to be effective. It's so powerful. It can pay for virtually everything that your child needs that is not covered by some form of public benefits. So it's really a must-do if you have a child who's not able to make a living because of a physiological disability, mental illness, or having suffered in an accident, something that makes them puts them in a really exposed condition. Okay. So now let's move on to the situation here where we still can't hear Mark. So I will continue. This is interesting. Mark can't interrupt me. My kid can't interrupt me. Whoa, what a day. Okay, so we'll talk about the child who is thriving, the good kid, who's making good judgment, who has assets. So the idea here is to think about a trust that gives that kid protections, that virtually ensures that money that you earn is going to stay in your bloodline, so to speak. So the type of trust we set up here, it exists for 2 or 3 generations. They last for over 100 years. It protects assets for your kids and for your grandkids. We call it a no-brainer. If you have any assets at all, if you own real property, this is a trust that you should implement for sure. So what are we talking about here? Okay, the concept here is something called a Dynasty Trust, which we in our office call a family protection trust. So this is a quote from the Wall Street Journal. You'll find countless comments to this effect. This trust offers tax savings and protects the family from creditors and ex-spouses. So let's walk through the family protection or Dynasty Trust. Okay. If you leave assets, when you pass away, you have kind of 2 choices when it comes to leaving assets to your kids. You can leave assets directly to them, or you can set up a trust, this type of trust for that kid. If you leave the assets directly to your child, they're hers. If she gets married, she probably commingles some of those assets. And if there's a divorce, up to half of the assets you left your kid could be lost to that son-in-law. You never really trusted him anyway, but it's exposed. If you leave assets in the family protection trust, the assets are locked in, they're protected, they're not going to be subject to division. So divorce protection is the one that the moms love the most. Really worrying about the future, worrying about divorces. Moms tend to worry about that a little bit more than the dads, is our general observation. Okay, what if your kid is sued? If your child inherits money directly from you, all of that money is exposed. It could be reached. If the money instead goes into this Dynasty or family protection trust, we've erected a very high barrier to protect those assets from litigation. And you never know. You don't expect your kid, you don't expect to be sued. Your kid doesn't expect to be sued. Who knows? If you can build in a protection from litigation, you should. Okay. Third benefit is the one that is perhaps most significant. And if you Google the term Dynasty Trust, this is what you're going to see featured. Let's say you leave $3 million, $4 million to your daughter in a Dynasty Trust. And let's say that during her lifetime, she invests it well, she's lucky, it grows to be worth $12 million. At her passing, that $12 million in the Dynasty Trust passes intact for the benefit of her kids. It is not exposed to estate tax. If she inherits that money directly, it's added together with all of the money that she and her husband might have grown. And if it's over the level of estate tax protection, 40% of it goes to the government, 40% of it in the form of estate taxes. If it's in this Dynasty Trust, any amount of growth is protected. It passes without exposure to tax. Your kids grow these assets, your grandkids have the same protections. They grow the assets again. The future great grandkids, they inherit all of the assets you left in these Dynasty Trusts without exposure to estate tax. You might be worried, gee, if I set up this trust, well, I don't want to deprive my kid of control. I trust him. So why would I do that? Well, if you trust your kid, you can have your daughter or your son be trustee of her own or his own trust. It isn't that they have to give up control. So this is like, I hesitate to say an ideal solution. We think it's a no-brainer that this is the type of trust that you want to set up. There was an NPR report about these Dynasty Trusts, and the quote, "This is how wealthy people avoid estate tax and protect assets for future generations." Not for the mega wealthy. We've done these trusts for 25 years or so. And indeed, early on, this was viewed as the preserve of the mega wealthy, Dynasty Trusts, mansions, etc. Well, if we have a home around here, that means we have $3 to $8 million just because of where we live. So it's a must. It's the most protective thing. You're not doing this to your children. You're doing this for your children. So Dynasty Trust, part of the planning that we view as virtually essential. Okay, now
You still can't hear me?
Oh, Mark is back.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, let me know if you can't in the future, and I'll take this slide. Usually you take this one, but I'll take this one since you got to do the part that I usually cover because it's about the next generation. If I go out, just signal me and you can take over. I apologize. Zoom is always an adventure.
Yeah, really.
Let's talk about grandkids. And this photo below is me with my grandparents and my mom on the right. So this is about future generations. What can you do? And just to circle back to what Mike talked about for the Family Protection Trust, again, that's a way to protect the good child, I guess. If you're not worried about judgment, what can you do to enhance their future? So this is about those perfect grandkids where you're not worried about, this is a tax planning tool where you can put money away for your grandkids where they won't get control of it at 18. And I can tell you right now, in the last month, I've gotten 3 or 4 calls or client meetings where they were freaking out because there was a lot of money in an UTMA account, a uniform transfer to minors account. That's what often grandparents will set up, where they put money away for those perfect grandkids. And they don't really think about it much because they don't really think about the fact that when you turn 18, you get access to all the dollars in a UTMA account. Don't do that. We had a client last week where their somewhat problematic grandson is about to get access to $1 million that was put in an UTMA account because someone didn't plan ahead. What can you do instead? Well, Crummy Trusts are one of many tools, but this is a really popular tool. So as you may or may not know, every year you can give up to $16,000 to as many people as you want without even reporting it to the IRS. It's the annual gift exemption, I guess you could say. So between 2 people, grandma and grandpa, you could give $32,000 a year for the benefit of a grandchild. But you probably don't want that grandchild to get access to this money the day they turn 18, or what if they already are 18? You may not want to give it to them directly. So one very simple but really powerful tool, it's not simple when it comes to drafting it, but it's simple in using it, is what we call a crummy trust. And they're not crummy because they're bad. This is actually named after a court case. So this lets you use the $16,000 exemption, which normally you have to give money directly to a person. Usually trusts don't get to benefit from that $16,000 exemption, but these are special trusts that require a couple steps that allow you to take advantage of the $16,000 annual gift. You put money in the Crummy Trust and you can name your kids, the parents of your grandkids, as trustees. So they can stay in charge of these trusts over the long term. So as you put money into this trust, it can build up to 30,000, 60,000, 100,000, and you can make sure mom and dad are in charge of it until your grandchild turns 25 or 30 or really any age you wish. We think these are better than 529 plans for education. Now, this doesn't necessarily take the place of a 529 plan, which lets you put money into an account in a tax favored basis to pay for education, but you don't know what the future is going to hold. I have very smart friends who didn't go to college because they just had a different path. And I had one friend in particular, her grandfather put money into a trust that was only to be used for college. And she was working her butt off and doing other things. And she had to talk to lawyers and figure out a way to get access to it because her life was taking a different path. So you don't know what the future is going to hold. A Crummy Trust is a wonderful thing to do, and it can be done in addition to other planning tools like family protection trusts or other age restricted trusts. So this is a really nice and elegant tool to take advantage of the annual gift exemption. Very estate tax efficient. It's a way to really transfer money within your family with no estate tax issues or gift tax issues, because we have a limit for how much we can give during our lives if we're not taking advantage of these $16,000 exemptions. Anything you'd add about Crummy Trust as a grandfather yourself, Dad?
Yeah, I always call them the grandparents' delight. It's a way to do something really safe and smart for the benefit of a grandkid without, as Mark said, without worrying that they're going to do something stupid when they get control at 18. I will add that a friend and client of ours many years ago put some stock in the company he was in into 3 Uniform Transfer to Minor Act accounts for his 3 kids. Years later, each account was worth about $4 million because the stock hit it big. 2 of the kids were great, one of them not good. And let's just say we had to take some extraordinary steps to fix it. The parents were just astonished, A, that they made so much money, and B, that the kid was going to get control at 18. So
yeah, and talk to us if you're facing these issues. If you already have money in an UTMA account that you can't undo, there are strategies we can use to still protect that money. And we talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating. Divorce, right? Depending on the statistics you look at, divorce rates are anywhere between 30% and 50% for first or second marriage, whatever that is. Inherited assets, to be clear, are separate property, even if you don't do a trust. But pillow talk happens. When you're with someone over many, many years, you start merging assets. And divorces can happen even in wonderful marriages. We all have friends who were in what seem to be wonderful relationships, and all of a sudden something changes and they don't stay together. So what can you do to protect your child so they don't have to say no to their spouse if they're like, well, why don't you just add my name to this account? It's no big deal. It goes back to that family protection trust that we talked about. So again, and if you're worried about your child still giving in and maybe naming their spouse as a trustee or something, you can always name a co-trustee with your child. So family protection trust, we talked about the fact that your child can be his or her own trustee of this trust. But if they have a co-trustee, you can name a co-trustee until they reach the age of your choosing. So a lot of our clients will say, well, I'm going to do a family protection trust. I think my daughter is very responsible, but if something happens to me before she's 30, I want there to be a co-trustee with her from between the ages of 25 and 30 or 25 and 35. And then when she's 35, then she takes over. So in many ways, a family protection trust is like a prenuptial agreement. And it's not just a prenuptial agreement for your child, it's a prenuptial agreement even for your grandkids, because the money in that trust continues for future generations. So I think that's a worry we hear all the time from clients. Either they've been through divorces or they've already seen their kids go through divorces. Again, family protection trusts are just wonderful, wonderful tools. And I want to focus on an issue that's really, it's my generation. We're a multi-generational firm. We think about these issues in a multi-generational manner. Mike and I have written articles about this and books about this. We have many adult clients who come in and we're talking about their planning, and we always want to understand, what they might inherit in the future. And we have many adult clients who will bring their parents back and will actually pay for their parents to create family protection trusts for them. They say, hey, mom and dad, don't leave money to me. Please leave it to a family protection trust. I will help pay for it if you're okay with it. Because really, it's like the kid spending just a little bit of money to get like a 100-year insurance policy for their entire inheritance. and potentially to avoid tax issues. Because if a child already has a large estate, let's say they're very successful, well, they might not be so worried about the judgment issue, but when they inherit assets, if they don't have a family protection trust, that just adds to their estate tax exposure in the future. So what they inherit from mom and dad, 40–50% of that might be lost in taxes in the future. So we have many parents, or sorry, adult children who will actually bring their parents in later to create family protection trusts for them. And sometimes they'll pay for it. So it's a wonderful investment. It's probably the best investment you could ever make for yourself if you're going to help your parents to do it. So just think about this. Even if you don't have kids yet, or you're not worried about this, maybe you should have your parents create a family protection trust for you. And that's not at all uncommon. And so I think as we kind of get towards the end of the subject matter here, there is no one size fits all approach. We can build your plan using combinations of the tools we talked about. Maybe it's a Crummy Trust, maybe there's an age restriction, maybe there's a special needs trust, maybe there's a family protection trust. We routinely, when families have 2 kids and one has a disability, we'll often do a special needs trust for the child with a disability and a family protection trust for the child who is working and earning a lot of money. So there's always tools available. And it's weird, you have to wrap your head around the idea that you actually don't want to leave money directly to your kids. It often makes so much sense to leave assets into trusts for the benefit of your kids. And it doesn't have to make their lives way more complicated. It's just an incredibly protective thing that you can do for future generations.
So let me reemphasize this for just a moment and give a slightly, an additional perspective on this. The third bullet point here talks about trust fund babies, trustafarians, a kid who inherits too much money. That's an issue. And in the book that I've written about avoiding estate tax, I have a whole chapter about this, because we have 3 clients who are trust babies, who have never worked, who feel like supplicants when they go to the bank trustee to get some money for something they want to do. It's their money, but yet they're not in control. And, it can be disabling. It can be horrible for self-esteem. It can expose you to, the bad kind of friends, all kinds of things. So just to say, we're not all about wealth. It's about what makes sense in a family situation. And it's not all or nothing. Like, you may feel that you want your child to inherit something directly, but gee, you're worried. So it isn't everything has to go into a certain kind of a trust, and that's it. You could leave $100,000 directly to your kid, and the rest goes into a trust. So again, no black and white, right or wrong answer here as we think about these things. A couple of days ago, somebody talked with me about, let's just call it religious concerns. They believe strongly in their religion. They're very concerned that one kid in particular is, to say the least, rejecting that religion, and that hurts them and it touches them very deeply. And they worry, is that something we can condition, that we can encourage in our trust planning? So let's just say it's a delicate, difficult issue, but we're working very hard on it. We're creating an environment that's going to create an opportunity for them to talk about it. I'm actually going to be in the role of kind of a counselor in that one. So, again, we can figure it out. There are issues that come up every day. Everybody is unique. Vanilla is to be avoided. The reality is we're not vanilla. Every family has issues. Just to that, every family.
And just to that point, I remember some clients I met with about a year ago, and we were talking about, they have a good sized estate. They own some property in the Bay Area, and they were talking about leaving money for their kids and grandkids. And they were just they did create family protection trusts for their kids. They wanted to leave some money for their grandkids. They'd already done that in a previous version of their trust. And they didn't really see any need to change that. I think they were leaving $50,000 or $100,000 for each grandchild. It's a lot of money, not in the context of buying property in California, but it's still a good amount of money. And in the course of our conversation, it came up that one of their grandsons had a heroin problem. They just kind of mentioned, oh, it's really stressing us out. And I immediately flagged, hey, if you have a serious substance abuse issue, inheriting $50,000 or $100,000 can almost be a death sentence, depending on where someone's at. And this light bulb went on. They said, oh my gosh, like, we need to make some changes. So we set up a protective structure for him to make sure that he wasn't going to inherit money directly. We set up a special needs trust for him where a third party could oversee things for him. and make sure that he didn't get access to this money. Now, that's the extreme side of things where inherited wealth can, or even a smaller amount of money in the grand scheme of things, can cause far more problems than it solves, and can actually be life threatening in some situations. So that's kind of the extreme side of this. But we've heard so many stories, and there's, again, almost always a good solution. And it's really up to you to work with us to kind of figure out where that right fit is. And we brought up a few tools here. And of course, this isn't exhaustive. There are so many other tools out there that we didn't even address. But when you plan ahead, it is extraordinary what you can do to protect assets and really to sleep well at night. And you can change your plan over time. When you set up these documents, even if you're setting up an irrevocable trust, the one that in theory can't be changed. Well, if you haven't put any money in it yet, maybe it's just there. So if something happens to you, money goes into it for your kids. There's no money in it. You can change that, and you can change your own plan. And so there's a lot of flexibility. And as a firm, we don't like to build too many specific restrictions in a long-term plan, because we know life changes, and your life will change, your kids' life will change, your grandkids' lives will change. So we want to be flexible. And we have other resources, by the way. We have other webinars out there if you want to learn about special needs trusts or other. Check out the Gilfix Law YouTube channel. Like this video if you're watching as a recording. Share it with your friends. If you're watching live, we're going to post this live. But don't lose this opportunity. If these issues struck a chord with you, if they flagged, oh my gosh, this is me, or I need to do something like this, meet with us. It's very simple. We can help you very efficiently get to some good solutions. There is no one size fits all approach. Even if you have an estate plan you set up a few years ago, life changes. We can help you take a look at it and see what updates you might need. We can go step by step with you through the changes you might want to make or the additions you might want to make. And even if you don't consider yourself wealthy or high net worth, over multiple generations, this can mean millions of dollars. Families that don't plan ahead, we see it all the time. There's one legal issue in a child's life or grandkid's life, everything can be lost. One bad decision about investing in a really bad idea or going on a very expensive trip to Vegas, everything you work for your whole life can be lost for future generations. There's so much that we can do if you plan ahead. So don't lose this opportunity. Reach out to us. It's very simple. If you want to set a meeting with us, you can call our office at 650-493-8070. I know we have other numbers online as well. Those all work as well. And you can reach out to Nadia at Gilfix.com. Gilfix.com is the easy way to contact us too. And just mention you saw this webinar. And if you aren't sure of whether we're the right fit, we can always set up a complimentary 10 or 15-minute Q&A call just to see if we are the right fit. We're going to go through how we work with you. Anything you add there, Mike, about how we work with families and any other issues that people really need to see us about?
No, I think that covers it. If you attended the webinar, if we haven't already done the trust planning for you, you get it. And I hope you've come to the conclusion that your head can't be in the sand. Who knows what's going to happen when? You just got to address these issues. You can't just put it off and think, oh, gee, I'll deal with it tomorrow. That's the mistake so many of us make. Yeah,
the return on investment for these types of tools is extraordinary. If you think about dollars in versus what your family gets back, what we're really proud of for what we do is just the incredible leverage you can get, by creating one trust that can protect hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And we've all seen from the stock market recently, you can put a lot of money in stocks and it can go way down and go up. But the cool thing about trusts and estate planning and doing it the right way is there's some certainty. You can build some certainty, and there's so much that we cannot control. Let's focus on what we can control. So if you did watch this as the YouTube, please like this video, share it, subscribe to our channel. It's a privilege to get to reach everybody in the community. We hope this gets you thinking, and we hope we get the chance to help you. But regardless, we want you to understand that all these tools are out there. There's so much that we can do to protect you and your family. Take a fresh look at your plan. It's one of the most rewarding things you can do when you really plan ahead. People sleep so much better at night, and they're able to know that they've done everything they can to protect their kids and their grandkids and even great-grandkids. So on that note, any final thoughts, Mike?
No, just a pleasure doing this. Glad we're able to reach more folks. So we look forward to meeting with you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please share it, like the video, subscribe here, and stay tuned for more free legal estate planning and financial educational videos.